Welcome, everyone. I'm going to mute everyone just to make it easier to be heard. We're going to go through a very interesting portion, and as we're going to discuss a transitional portion that actually has in its middle an event that is going to replot the course of the next weeks. Something changes, something happens in the middle of this week's parsha. Let's run through the basic details of what happens this Shabbos. So Hashem commands Aaron to light the golden menorah on a daily basis. That was a beautiful menorah. You've probably seen it in Yerushalayim and Jerusalem on the steps on the way down to the Kotel. They have a replica there. It was 7 branches, not like Hanukkah, 8 branches, a central stem, 3 on each side, which was a total of 7, and it was lit every single day. Subsequent to that, there was the initiation of the Levim, or the Levites. They had to shave their bodies, they had to go to the mikveh, they had to bring sacrifices to ready them to practice in the temple. The Levim are consecrated to Hashem in place of the firstborn. Originally, the plan was that there would be a Kohen in everyone's family. The firstborn in the family would be the Kohen. So there wasn't a specific tribe like the tribe of Levi that would contain the Kohanim. The Kohanim would be in any household that had a firstborn. After the sin of the golden calf, where the only tribe that remained clean and true to Hashem was the tribe of Levi, the responsibility of the firstborn was removed and put into the domain of the Levim, the subset of the Levim, the descendants of Aaron. So Aaron was a Levi originally, as was Moshe Rabbeinu. They were from the tribe of Levi, but the descendants of Aaron carried on the extra responsibilities of being the Kohanim. Now, the instruction to bring the Korban Pesach on the first anniversary of Pesach. So a year later, the first year, they had to put the Paschal, bring the Paschal offering and put the blood on their doorposts. That was all part of the Exodus. Now, a year later, they were in the desert, but they were given the command to once again bring the Paschal offering and to keep the festival of Pesach. But there were individuals, they just couldn't. They were technically unable to fulfill the mitzvah of bringing the Korban Pesach because they were ritually impure. And in their condition of impurity and a technicality, they would now be excluded from being able to fulfill this mitzvah. And they complained to Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is one example we see how far-reaching a positive complaint is. We'll come back to that theme because there's a lot of complaining in this week's portion. And the question is, what do we complain about? So in response to their complaint, Hashem initiated the second Pesach, which was Pesach Sheni, that a month later, exactly 1 month later, they would be able to have a second chance. And for those who were unable on a technicality to do it the first Pesach, which is the month of Nisan, they were given a second chance a month later. Full stop. The Mishkan was covered by a cloud by day and by a pillar of fire at night. Hopefully there'll be time to open that into a little bit of thought. When the cloud lifted, they would journey onwards. That was the sign, following the cloud until it came to rest. At times, they only stayed overnight. This was unbelievable. I mean, they were 40 years in the desert. And the journeys did not correlate with the time of how much time they were there. It was 42 journeys spread over 40 years. It would approximately be a journey a year. That wasn't the case. Sometimes they would spend many years in one place, and sometimes they would spend one day in another. So how did they know when to move? The cloud lifted. Full stop. Now it talks about the silver trumpets. They were sounded on various occasions. They assembled the nation or its leaders. There was the signal to the beginning of a journey. So once the cloud lifted, they would blow the trumpets and everyone would now hear and see that it was time to move. Before they went into battle, they blew the trumpets, these silver trumpets. And coming together with some of the communal sacrifices, it was blown as well. So you had silver trumpets blown on very different occasions. Completing the summary, nearly 1 year after Har Sinai, the cloud rose and they journeyed in formation. So they had been at Sinai, which they arrived at 49 days or a little less than that, on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. So they arrived approximately 42 days after they came out of Egypt. They arrived at Sinai and they remained there a whole year. Now the cloud lifted, they came into formation, they began to journey. Moshe Rabbeinu pleads with his father-in-law to join him on their journey to the land of Israel, and he actually decides not to. He goes back to Midian. Now comes other complaints. They complained about the difficulty of the journey. Too much traveling, too many pressures on the journey. They complained about the manna, the man, which they could taste any food they wanted, but it still didn't have the texture of regular food. They wanted ribikis and boerewors, and they wanted to see it, not just taste it miraculously. Complained that the menu wasn't great. They wanted meat. Moshe turns to Hashem. He cannot bear his leadership role any longer. We need to come back to that. Moshe Rabbeinu could handle almost anything. He handled the Jewish people dancing around the golden calf, and he didn't give up. Here he seems to say, I just can't. I cannot carry on in this role anymore. Hashem tells Moshe to gather 70 elders who will assist him with the leadership duties. So there's now going to be delegation. He promises to provide an abundance of meat until it will come out of their nostrils, is the idiom that is used. They'll have so much meat that it's going to become excessive. It's going to come out of their nostrils. Then there was 2 elders, Eldad and Medad, who did prophecy. Yeshua was concerned about it, ran to tell Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu placated him, and he said that Hashem communicates with all his people, and don't be upset that there's 2 other people also having communication from Hashem. It doesn't take away from anyone else. Hashem then causes a wind to sweep in a huge number of quail. That's a type of bird from the sea. And those who ate the meat gluttonously died in a plague. So they got their meat, but then they became dead meat. And finally, the last thing, right at the end of the parasha, Miriam talks negatively about Moshe Rabbeinu, and she's stricken with saras, which is leprosy, and there she has to be sent out of the camp for a week, and the whole of Bnei Israel wait for Miriam for a week, and then they journey further. So her predicament put the whole of Bnei Israel on hold. She held up the entire people, and they stayed behind, and out of respect for Miriam, hopefully there'll be time for that as well. Let's go through some of the messages that we can take, and I'm going to go quickly because we only have half an hour. At this point, 20 minutes, because we are going to stop a bit early so that those who are coming in to hear Rabbi Simpson's class about bereavement and neshamas and souls and life after death continues its second self-standing shiur tonight. I do not believe we're able to get it onto Zoom, so it's only for those who will be present, but it's going to happen right here, so I'm going to end a few minutes earlier. So what does it mean when you raise the light? This is the instruction to kindle the candelabra. Why couldn't it just be kindle the menorah? What does it mean to raise? That's the word that is used. This is to teach us that the lamplighter must hold the flame to the wick until a flame arises of its own accord. What are we saying here? You know, sometimes we have to light a fire in our homes, or a braai, making a braai. So you get blitz, and you get the brick of that white brick of very flammable material, and you put it into the coals, or you put it into the wood, and there's a beautiful fire. But unless you know what you're doing, unless you can read what's going on, you think it's a beautiful fire, but sometimes it's not. It's just burning the flammable material. The wood hasn't caught. So you're getting all excited that your fire is doing very well because it looks like a really beautiful fire, but it's not actually caught in itself. All of that's a metaphor when we teach. We should not teach people who then depend on us for the fire that we are creating in them, in the knowledge and in the enthusiasm that we impart. It should not be constantly dependent on that source, on the blitz. The blitz has to be there to the extent that it allows the fire to take hold of the coals and to enter into the wood so that the wood begins to burn. The child that we're teaching should not always be dependent on the external element of the teacher, that they become a dependent on the information and the education that's coming their way Of course, we are initially dependent, and without the fire, without the blitz, the fire is not going to happen. But we have to make sure that we're not creating dependence on us. We're creating people who will be inspired and eventually will carry the fire on their own. They should not be constantly dependent. Secondly, a lamplighter ignites the latent potential within. So when we light the lamp, there was something already ready there to be lit, to burn. The lamp was there. And likewise, when we ignite another Jew in the performance of mitzvahs, in the instruction of Torah, we know that that Jew is inherently, essentially connected to Hashem. We don't have to create a lamp. The lamp is there. The soul of man is the lamp of Hashem. But we must establish others so that their lamp glows independently and in turn kindles the potential in others. They have a capacity, and we've got to bring to the fore their latent ability and capacity to be able to ignite on their own and to remain lit without us. If they remain dependent on the teacher for the rest of their lives, the teacher hasn't done a proper job. So moving on, it's also a question of who lights, but let's move on. And then it says, Vayas Kain Aaron, and Aaron did so. He did exactly what Hashem told him to do. So the commentary is a little bit concerned. Why would the Torah tell us that Aaron did so, meaning that Aaron followed the instruction? Imagine standing in the sanctuary before the holy menorah and to be capable of actually lighting the lamps, to place the wicks in position to fill the lamps without spilling the oil on the floor. This is truly an exceptional achievement on the part of Aaron, says Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. Of course, Aaron would not deviate from what Hashem told him to do, but it's telling us that Aaron actually managed to do it. Can you imagine being given this job by Hashem, who's now watching you, and you've got to carry the oil and put it into the little bowl and make sure that nothing spills and nothing the nerves and the excitement and the pressure of doing this immense job. And he held himself, says Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, only he, Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, who always saw the strength in everybody, could understand how hard it must have been for Aaron to simply follow through the functional duties with so much pressure on him. Second interpretation is, what does it mean that Aaron did so? Of course he would do so. Why does it need to emphasize that he did so? Aaron obviously was instructed and he fulfilled, but he did so. What does so mean? The Rambam says that when you're instructed to do something, you can often delegate and hand over some of the duties to somebody else. We don't ourselves have to do everything on our own. And Aaron could possibly have summoned assistance and help and family members to assist him in doing the duties. The emphasis is that Aaron did so. He didn't want to give up on one iota that would then be not his own fulfillment of the mitzvah directly. That is how inspired and motivated he was to fulfill it. He wanted to do it all himself. He loved the mitzvah, so he didn't hand it over. Another comment that is made by Rashi, he did so. This means that he didn't change. And again, we ask ourselves, what do you mean he didn't change? He didn't change and light a menorah of 8 branches or 6 branches, or light it every second night instead of every night. Of course he would do so. What is so important that he didn't change? So the Kotzker Rebbe says he didn't change in the sense that all of us are excited when we initiate a new project. A new program is beginning. Wow, we're excited, we're running, we're jumping, we're talking about it, it's in the news, it's the whole family is breathing and living the energy of the new event. And then a week later, and a month later, and 5 years later, and 10 years later. So he didn't change means that the first day's enthusiasm, the excitement of the first day could be palpable and felt every single subsequent day. You know, we all have the moments that things happen. We get married, we stand on the chuppah, we love our husband, our wife, we care, we're so passionately involved in what's happening. There's such an unbelievable energy. And then a year or 2 or 3 or 5 later, we begin to have expectations and we take it for granted. And we don't have the same enthusiasm. Imagine if every husband and wife and family would have the same energy that they had It was under the chuppah. We try and make the chuppah so special so that it does remain with us every single day of our life. Imagine if every bar mitzvah boy, when he's 14 and 15 and 17, and his birthday when he's 65, has the same enthusiasm that he had when he stood at his bar mitzvah. It's a tall order, but the specialness of Aaron was that he didn't change. He was Aaron that first day, and the excitement of the first day enthused every subsequent day. He always was passionate. And then a completely different interpretation is that he didn't change. Not that he didn't change the duty, but that he himself didn't change. Because sometimes when we do things that are important, it gets to our head and we become self-conscious and we're self-absorbed and we become different people because of the event that happened in our life. Here, Aaron was lighting the menorah in the sanctuary, the temple of Hashem. Can you imagine how important that was? But when he came out of that activity, he looked like Aaron. He didn't come out putting on any airs. He didn't stand lording over other people and making himself significant. He remained the same Aaron, even after going through such important events. That's another sign of greatness. Okay, well, how did the menorah happen? It had 7 branches, we said, but it all began with one piece of gold, and different to how any craftsman would make a menorah. You ask any craftsman how to make a menorah, they make pieces, they make arms, and the arms are then welded onto a central core, and that is how you make a menorah. That's the most obvious thing. If you have something that has a whole lot of branches, you piece it together. But no, the Torah says take one piece of gold and knock it until you have protrusions, and then work on those protrusions until you draw them out into the fancy shape, and then you work on it. It all came from one block of gold. Nothing was attached. It was all emerged from what was really one. And that represents the people of Israel. Our branches represent diverse individuals in all walks of life. Yes, we have Kohanim, Levim, Israelim, men, women, we have children. We have all different types of branches, all different individuals that are so important to appreciate everyone in their own right. But the menorah was hammered out from a single piece of gold because all souls of Israel are a single essence. We all come from the same. We are breath of the essence of Hashem. You, me, and every single Jew. Whether we're more frum or less frum, we're more knowledgeable, less knowledgeable, we're all the children of Hashem. But we all come from the same block of gold. And then we identify differences, different directions. It's invested into different bodies and different physical lives. Yeah, there is diversity, but we remember we all came from the same block of gold. And furthermore, when the branches went out in all the different directions, so there was a lip on the top of each of those branches, a little bowl that held the oil and a little lip that held the wick, and all the lips of the bowls, 7 bowls on top of the menorah, or 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, faced inwards. Because all the diverse limbs of the menorah face the body from which they extend. So whilst we have diversity of talent, ability, strength, we're all facing the same direction to make this world a better place, to make Hashem more happy with this world, to make a dwelling place for Hashem, to recognize that we all come from the same place. So we have different direction, but a singular focus. The focus is to serve Hashem in different ways, but to serve Hashem. That's what the Rebbe says about the diversity of branches and the oneness that these branches come from and direct their attention to. Okay, very quickly, because we've discussed this before, it's interesting that Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, came as a result of the Jews who were in a predicament that couldn't fulfill the mitzvah, came to Moshe Rabbeinu and they cried. And they said, Lama Nigara, why should we lose out? We don't want to lose out on the mitzvah. Please do something, Moshe Rabbeinu, that we can also fulfill the mitzvah. And that initiates, that is what results in Moshe Rabbeinu talking to Hashem, and then Hashem gives the mitzvah. Very strange succession of events. Normally Hashem told us what to do. Here Hashem told us to do as a result of our complaint. This is an example of a complaint when something bothers us that is of substance, that is meaningful. When we cry out to Hashem because we want Mashiach, We want this world to be a kinder, more gentle, more beautiful place. When that's what's bothering us, it's unbelievable the mountains we can move. Not only here below, but even in the heavens. Hashem responds. Hashem initiates a mitzvah because of us. We have a capacity, we have, like we said, a lever. If you have a lever that has to turn a big boat, the further you are away from the boat, the more leverage you have. Interesting. Because then you have the power, the torque of the very long handle. If you have a short handle, if you have a very long handle, you can turn the boat more easily. And here we are, so supposedly far away in this physical world, so removed. Hashem gave us the power to move worlds. But we've got to complain about the right things. And maybe the word complain is the wrong word. We should need, we should want, we should cry out for what really hurts. What do I want? Because that becomes an important differentiation, because we're now going to talk about different kinds of complaints. But if what bothers us is that we want this world to be more holy, we want our children to be more involved, we want ourselves to be more involved, we want to learn more, we want to have more opportunity, that's the issue of our lives, then we're blessed. If our complaint is distraction and things that are of not such importance. Very briefly, and then I'm going to still give 5 minutes to the actual advertised thought relating to this week's Shabbos. It says that at times the crowd lasted from evening until morning, and then they journeyed. Several thousand plebim assembled the Mishkan, even if only for a single day. We said before, sometimes they stayed in one place for a year, and sometimes they were only in one place. They were in a place for only one day. But all of the details of the beams and the brackets and the gold and the silver and the tapestries, that they hanged it out as if they were going to be there for years. They were going to be there for one day. Imagine people standing on the side saying, it's only one day, come on, we don't have to worry about this technical thing. This is only there to keep it in place, but we're only here for a day. We see that the attention to detail, you're there, be there. Be there. You're there only for one day, make that day matter. Don't think that it doesn't matter because I'm only here for a while. Make every journey something significant. Utilize that time. Make it meaningful and make it worthwhile. Even the things that are so transitory. I want to get to this point about the freebie. Because what happens in the book of Numbers is that until now we've spoken about many beautiful things. We counted the Jewish people. We put together the sanctuary. We inaugurated the sanctuary. We inaugurated the Levim. They started doing their tasks. The cloud came down, addressed that there was blessing. Hashem said the word shalom from between the two krovim. If we would look at the whole book of Bamidbar until this parsha, and in fact until this event in this week's parsha, everything is going oh so swell. Beautiful. Everything is just going according to plan. On the other side of this event that we're now discussing, we're going to talk about a plague. Then we're going to talk about Miriam right at the end, talking negatively about her brother Moshe Rabbeinu. She gets leprosy. And then we go into the story of Korach. A rebellion takes place. There's spies that are sent that come and give an evil report about the land of Israel. Then there's the terrible curses that Bilam wanted to bring upon the Jewish people, and the 24,000 Jews that died in a plague because they wanted to take the Midianite woman. From this point, it is a terrible downhill. We go from one problem to the next. We've been going so well, we were climbing, we were going elevated higher, then something happens, and we always look for it. What was the catalyst for change? What was the event that made things move in a different direction? But clearly, from this moment on, the direction is downhill, one sort of problem after the other. And if we find the clear moment, it is when the Jewish people came and said, we are tired of this journey. We're sick and tired of walking alongside Hashem. Zocharnu es hadaga asher achalnu chinam b'Mitzrayim. We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt for nothing. The Sifri, quoted by Rashi, says, what do you mean for nothing? Nothing was for nothing in Egypt. In Egypt, they served Pharaoh with terrible, terrible pain. for 210 years. So how could they say it was for nothing? For nothing means without responsibility. We didn't have a Torah. We didn't have a moral code. We didn't have to get up with a purpose and a meaning and a direction and accountability and responsibility. We were slaves and we suffered, but we didn't carry the burden of responsibility. That's a turning point. When a person wakes up in the morning and says, I just want to live without accountability, responsibility. I want the freebie. And this whole society we live in, one of the most useless words that's bandied about in the marketplace and in life is free. You can get this for free. Buy this and you get this for free. Not only the SMSs we get that told us that we just won some kind of sweepstakes for $65 million, whatever it is. And all we have to do is send them our phone numbers and our bank account numbers, and then we'll be rich forever. Not only that kind of free, but gambling, free, comes easy money. We just want to be able to get off the hook of responsibility, and we love to get the freebie. But as they say, there's no free lunches. And invariably, the things that are advertised and thrown in our faces that you can buy and get for free, and this is special sale, we'll end up buying things we never actually needed. We'll end up buying much more than we ever wanted. We're so intrigued by the freebie that we'll end up having more debt than we actually thought. We put our credit cards out. We feel as though there's no pay. We're just putting out our card. Comes back eventually to bite us. But certainly with morality, the Sifri is identifying a tremendous failure of the Jewish people turning to Moshe Rabbeinu and saying, we remember the good old days in Egypt. How good were they? It suffered so terribly. But we didn't have accountability for mitzvahs. We didn't have a moral code. We didn't have to live up to a certain expectation. And that's what we loved. And this is when Moshe Rabbeinu says, I don't know how to be a leader of those people. I could almost handle them dancing around the golden calf. Terrible sin, terrible failure. I could understand how human beings are enticed and guarded away and infatuated with things that distract them. I could understand that. But the attitude of the freebie, that we'll end up worrying about having a menu, that life is about the meat instead of the manna, and that becomes the complaint. That's now the issue. Not complaining about why should we miss out about Pesach, but a complaint about why should we have to fulfill mitzvahs we wanted as a freebie. This is the turning point. When society reaches a point that our kids sense an entitlement that we owe, and everything owes me, and I don't have to live up to any expectations. Give me, and I want it for free, and I want lots of it. When that's what it is, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't relate to this. I can't relate to a people that's caught up in such emptiness. And that, which seems so subtle, just a little sin, we remember the fish, we prefer a different menu, it precipitates a decline, a change. Instead of growth and development, it precipitates a decline. This is where we have to end. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And please, God, we will put it on the general. We'll continue next week. Have a wonderful Shabbos, a beautiful weekend. It's a longer weekend. We wish everyone a beautiful Shabbos. Thank you for joining us.